So first, Christianity makes a truth claim, a massive truth claim. At the heart of Christianity is the claim that Jesus Christ is God. That the man who walked on the earth 2,000 years ago was God with skin on. It is God who stepped into our world and lived on our world. Now, that is a massive claim, but it's not a claim without evidence. You see, Jesus didn't live his life in a cave hidden away somewhere. He lived his life on the world stage before thousands and thousands of people. Countless people spoke with him. Countless people listened to him. Countless people watched him and his life and what he did. They saw how he raised the dead back to life again. They saw how he seemed to have this incredible control over nature. They saw how he healed sick people simply by touching them. Countless people saw something they'd never seen before. They weren't duped, they weren't being fooled. They saw something they'd never seen before in this person, Jesus. And countless people concluded he really was God. Now Luke was a contemporary of Jesus, and he collated and recorded some of those eyewitness accounts so that we can examine the evidence for ourselves. So that we, if we want to, can be sure that this claim about Jesus is true. On your seats, you've got one of these little books called Uncover, and this is the account that Luke has given us, a collection of the eyewitnesses to what Jesus said and did. And if you want to, just turn to the first kind of chapter of Luke. It's on page 4. And I'm just going to read you the first few verses of Luke, and you can get a sense of what Luke is trying to give us in this little book here. So he says this, right at the beginning of his account: "Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught." See, in that account, Luke is saying, I'm giving you the eyewitness accounts, I'm giving you the evidence, so that if you want to have certainty about this claim that Jesus is God, you can. You can investigate it for yourself. And so I want to suggest to you that Christianity is an absolute claim that is true, verifiably true, based on evidence that Jesus is God. But maybe you're thinking, look, it's that kind of claim that's the problem. See, it's that kind of arrogant claim that God is only found in Jesus, that God is only found in Christianity. It's that kind of claim that leads to problems and tensions and conflicts. See, Christianity is not only true, it also is a claim and a belief that leads to peace and humility rather than conflict and arrogance. Let me just try and give you an example to show what I mean. Christianity began to flourish in the 1st and 2nd century AD. And at that time, the Roman worldview, in which the kind of Christian worldview was growing up in, they would say that there were many gods, and each god was equally valid and should be worshipped. If a new god came on the scene, then it was just added to the collection of other gods that you would worship. The Roman worldview, if you like, was incredibly inclusive. And then the Christians come along with a very exclusive claim that Jesus is the only true God, and other religions are wrong. And when you compare the two societies, the Roman society and the Christian society, you see something quite surprising. You see that the Christian society is much more inclusive, peaceful, humble than the Roman one. So slaves were excluded from certain parts of Roman societies, whereas slaves were welcomed into the Christian community. Women at the time were treated poorly in the Roman community with very few rights, whereas in the Christian community, women were treated equally and fairly. The poor were marginalised in Roman society. If there was a plague in a city, the rich would leave and leave the poor behind to die. Christians stayed behind with the poor to look after them. Actually, an emperor called Julian, who was around the 4th century, he wrote a treatise called Against the Galileans, which is the same as Against the Christians. And in it he complained that the Christians had from the very earliest of days swelled their ranks with the most vicious, disreputable and contemptible of persons. The kind of people at the bottom of society. And he was saying that was a terrible thing. Christians were inclusive, brought in the poor, the women, the slaves. See, the exclusive beliefs of Christianity that Jesus was the one true God led to an inclusive, peaceful, and loving community. How can that possibly be the case? It goes against everything that seems to be intuitive. Why were these Christians able to be so sacrificial, so welcoming, so generous? Well, it's because at the heart of Christianity isn't just the truth claim that Jesus is the one true God, but it's also that Jesus, the one true God, died for his enemies. We don't have time right now to go into how Jesus' death saved his enemies, but the point is this. If you become a Christian, you have to acknowledge that by nature, you're an enemy of God. That is, I'm not good. I'm not better than anyone else. I'm not more virtuous or more upstanding than anyone else. And that leads to humility. Jesus says, Christianity says that the Christian is no better than anyone else from any other faith or no faith. See, Jesus died for his enemies. And Jesus died for his enemies. He didn't reject them. He didn't marginalize them. He didn't oppress them or harm them. He died for them. And as he did die, he forgave his enemies. He showed mercy to his enemies. And see, as a Christian grasps that, then so they treat their enemies or those who are different to them in a similar way. Generous, merciful, loving, sacrificial towards anyone and everyone. In the same way that Jesus was merciful, generous, sacrificial to anyone and everyone. Now, of course, for a Christian, that is a slow process. You look at Christians and you see that many of us are struggling to apply that essential truth to our lives. But the thing is, the more a Christian understands that, then the more they become like Jesus, like someone who died for his enemies, someone who was merciful and kind to those who were different to him. So it is a massive truth claim that Jesus is God. There is evidence for it. And it is a truth claim that, if believed and taken on board, transforms lives so that people become increasingly humble, increasingly peaceable. And actually, just as we close, the wonderful thought is that there is a possibility of knowing for yourself the God who created you. As you look at Jesus, as you listen to things he says, maybe pick up one of those books of the account of his life, then you could possibly meet the God who created an incredible claim, surely one worth thinking a bit more about.